I am joined by Elizabeth Smart, one of the most high-profile survivors in our country, and I know so many people know the background of your story and being kidnapped and surviving for many months. And you've really turned this into a lot of advocacy over the years. I know you have a new book that is coming out. I know that you have a Netflix documentary coming out, so we have a lot to talk about. But I want to go back a little bit to when this happened. And I know you've talked about this for so many years, but from a little bit of a different lens. I know you were 14, a pretty sheltered life, a great childhood. When this happened, did you think you were going to survive? Or at the time, did you think you were going to die? And did that evolve as these months went on where you were trying to stay alive?
Initially, I mean, he was holding a knife to my neck. I thought that I would probably be dead by morning. I, yeah, I very much felt like my life was on the line. I felt like my sister's life was on the line. She was in the same bed as I was, and I I remember being absolutely terrified. As the months went on, I feel like I found ways to survive. And that was basically doing what this man said. I always felt like that threat, my mortality was always a question mark, but I felt like by doing what he said, by I guess falling in line to with what he expected, that was my best chance of survival. And I always knew what he was capable of. I didn't always know what other people were capable of.
Yeah. You mentioned your sister, and I know she was the only witness to this. And it was several months before she was able to kind of put two and two together that his voice was the same voice as somebody who had done some handy work on your guys' house and that you had been around. Had she not been able to identify that, do you think it would have been many more months, possibly years until you were rescued?
I mean, law enforcement really thought that I had been kidnapped and killed and hidden by this suspect that they had in custody named Richard Reese, and he actually died in prison of a brain aneurysm. And so they thought that my disappearance had gone to the grave with him. And I mean, when my sister told my dad what had happened, he insisted on going down to the police station. He insisted on having a um, sketch artist come in and try to sketch a picture of him. I believe my brothers tried to describe him. My dad tried to describe him. And I mean, the police placated him, but they still were really thinking that it was this Richard Reese who had kidnapped me. And my dad was very close with John Walsh from America's Most Wanted back then. And he had called up John and said, you know, my Mary Catherine thinks it's this man. We've gone down to the police department. We've had this sketch made up, but the police don't think it's him. And John was just like, you just have to do everything that you possibly can. If you think there's a chance it's someone else, like we've got to go after it. And it ended up actually being John Walsh going on Larry King Live and releasing that sketch that really got my captor's face out there. And had that not happened, I think that my abduction very well could have continued.
It kind of goes to show that was kind of the social media at the time. Like that show, getting that out there was definitely the best way to spread what he looked like and then get those tips that come in. Had you ever asked why you think it was you and not your sister if you guys were in the same bed?
I did ask my captor, why did you pick me? Why did you kidnap me? And I mean, he'd seen me one time and he didn't want a small child. I mean, he wanted a young girl. The first day that he had me up in the mountains, I mean, after, running me up into the mountains, getting to this hidden camp, and telling me that I was now his wife and that we needed to consummate our marriage. I remember doing everything I could to stop him from raping me, to just give myself enough time because I thought that if I wasn't killed right away, then if I could just hold him off long enough, someone would be there to rescue me. Someone would find me. And so I was just desperate to hold him off. I remember even telling him that I hadn't started my period yet. I'm
Yeah.
a late bloomer in many things. And I mean, he stopped for a second, and I remember him calling out to the woman, my other captor, saying, you know, she hasn't started her period. Is it still okay? Like, is it still okay to rape me? And she responded back, yeah, it's still okay. And he ended up raping me. So he wanted a young girl, but he didn't want too young. He wanted young enough that he could still manipulate. I mean, he used the exact word, he wanted someone who was still malleable, who wasn't set in their ways, but also he didn't want like a young child.
Gosh. It's interesting because I know he, was a self-proclaimed prophet, and that is how he presented himself. And I've covered a slew of these kind of self-proclaimed prophets that end up abusing children, raping children, and end up in these severe criminal cases. That manipulation, especially of the age that you were, it's almost impossible for somebody at that age to be able to get out of. Why do you think these people become almost radicalized in their own religion? And did that change your view on religion and your own faith once this happened?
I think that, I mean, just using my own experience, he wanted, and I saw this pattern repeated all the time. He wanted power. He wanted control. He wanted to feel like he was special. And I think the way he found to do that the very best was through religion. That could be something that was manipulated and twisted. And I mean, we have so many religions today, and I think religion is a beautiful thing, you know, if it brings you peace, if it brings meaning to your life, if it helps you, you know, be a better person. I think that's wonderful. But with all these religions, you know, people can take the same verse of scripture or the same teaching and interpret it so many ways, and so it makes it very easy for these fanatics, these
Mm-hmm.
extremists, to take that same thing but run so much further with it. And that's exactly what Brian Mitchell and Wanda Barzee did in my situation. He was able to take things and twist it into something ugly, and use it on me, use it on people around him. And also I think it's important kind of to look at that time period. I mean, 9/11 had just
Yeah.
happened 9 months before I was kidnapped. I feel like everyone was, and this is from a 14-year-old's perspective, but I feel like everyone was really sensitive about any form of extremism. So if my captors were walking down the street, because I mean they dressed different, they looked different, I remember seeing people who were on the same side of the street as us see us, stop, cross the street, walk down the other side of the street. Once they were past us, they'd cross back over and keep going. Or people would stick their heads out of cars and yell, Osama or Bin Laden out at my captors because, I mean, they looked different.
Yeah. Yeah. At 14 too, that's such a pivotal age. I feel like it's you're kind of coming of age, you're a teen, but you're starting high school typically. I mean, that is a very interesting time just as your brain is developing too. So when they had you and they're stripping you of the identity that you knew as Elizabeth Smart, did you feel you were able to keep your identity internally, mentally that whole time, even though they were telling you now you're somebody different and this is who you're going to be?
I would say that I never forgot who I was. Of course, I had questions. Was I ever going to be rescued? Was I going to be held forever up in these mountains?
Yeah.
I mean, eventually, was I going to get pregnant? Was I going to die in childbirth? Or was I going to die of starvation or just being out in the elements? I mean, there were so many questions. And what if this went on for years and years and years? How was I going to survive? There were always questions.
Do you think his intention was eventually to kill you?
I think if I had ever like really rebelled, I don't think he would have hesitated. But I think he just loved having control over someone. I think he just loved feeling like no matter what he did, he could get away with it. He could do whatever he wanted to me. Whereas Wanda Barzee, his my other captor, his actual wife, she I mean she would push back. He had ways of placating her and still maintaining control over her,
Yeah.
but she was a lot harder to control than I was. I mean,
Right.
she could put up a much bigger fight than I could. I wasn't like a big, strong 14-year-old. I was, he was bigger than me.
Of
I
course.
was average.
Yeah. How do you wrestle with the fact that, I mean, this completely took your innocence away? And I know other people may go through this too, who as well, who are abused or have gone through something really traumatic in their childhood. But at that time frame, I mean, the sexual abuse that you went through, the physical, situation that you were in, how do you wrestle with that now as an adult, knowing that you have one shot to be a kid, to be a teen, and they completely took that from you?
That was something that I would say haunted me and I struggled with for a very long time. And I I I guess I just had to come to learn for myself that there isn't anything that anyone else can do to you that can take away your value, because I feel like when a person goes something through something like sexual violence or even domestic violence, you can just be made to feel like you are so worthless,
Yeah,
and you can feel like you're so alone. It feels so isolating, and that you're not good enough and that you're not pure enough. And that was definitely something that really haunted me. And I did eventually get to a point where all the fear that I had of people judging me for what happened, I was able to tell myself, if anyone judges you negatively for being raped, for being abused, they are not worthy of your attention. They are not worthy of your friendship. And as a whole, I feel like that is so much of why I started my foundation today, because we need to change culture. We need to help victims realize that they're not alone. They have nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, it doesn't matter what the situation was. If you were raped, it's not your fault. The fault will always lie squarely on the perpetrator.
absolutely. Can you take us through what a day to day looked like typically when you were held captive, and what you were being told during that time?
So our days were, I mean, I feel like I was talked at all day. I mean, he might wake up in the morning and first thing rape me. He would want to pray, and when he would pray, it would go on for like 45 minutes, an hour. And he didn't ever let me eat until these prayers had been done, and then he would want to read his personal scripture that he wrote, his revelations that he wrote. He'd want to read that as well, and then eventually he would give me something to eat. It was always dictated by him what I got to eat, what I got to drink. And then I mean, he would talk some more. I mean, he never stopped talking. And it was about how important he was and how he had suffered so much in his life to help prepare him to be God's servant, to help him to prepare to be God's prophet, and just how Jesus Christ had descended below all things and took on the sins of the world. This was something that he had to do. And he didn't actually want to kidnap me, but it wasn't really kidnapping, it was him rescuing me, and that I should be grateful because I had been chosen by God to be his second wife. And actually, I wasn't going to be his only um, wife. He was going to go out and kidnap 7 young girls, and I was just the first of the 7. And that his wife, Wanda Barzee, she was the mother of Zion, and she had a crown awaiting her in heaven, whose glory only was rivaled by that of the Son of Gods. I mean, we could go on all day talking about what he talked about. And then we had to, many times we had to get water. There was a stream that was, I mean, it was really hard to get to. It was really hard to get to where this hidden campsite was. It was, I would say, very treacherous. And so he would take me, and I had a metal cable wrapped around my ankle, and he would hold on to it like a leash, and he would bring me down this mountainside where we were still pretty far up in the mountains, and there was a stream that just came straight up out of the ground up there, and he had the empty like milk gallon containers, and he would fill these containers up, and then he would carry some, I would carry some, and we would struggle back up the mountainside. I would say really my days consisted of listening to him talk all day, um, being given very little food, and then being raped. And that's what my days really consisted of.
And thinking about it now, too, obviously now we know who your captors were, but when no one knew where you were or who had done this, I mean, there was quite a bit of suspicion around your own family for a while. And that happens a lot in cases like this. But once you were rescued and then now making sense of that, how did you kind of process the fact that a lot of people thought was her own, father or mother involved in this?
I mean, I remember just thinking, you're crazy. How could you ever think it was my dad? How could you ever think it was my mom? Like, I remember just being like appalled that anyone would
Sure.
ever consider my family. I mean, I knew my family. None of them would ever hurt me. None of them would ever betray me in that way. So I was shocked that that blame, inquiry, suspicion had ever fallen on my family. I just couldn't believe that anyone would think that my family would hurt me.
And how difficult it must have been for them to, we don't know where our daughter is. We don't know what happened. And now we're dealing with this cloud of suspicion. I mean, it's just awful how that kind of unfolds. I know your family is extremely important to you. And I know that not all that long ago, your parents went through a divorce. They made it through a lot of years during what happened and then after. And oftentimes events like that can separate, parents or a husband and a wife losing a child. I know they didn't lose you, but went through something very traumatic. But I know their divorce really affected you, even as an adult. Why do you think it was that you were so emotionally affected by it later in life?
I remember years ago I did a study abroad, and one of my friends came on this study abroad with me, and I remember we were talking, and she was just saying things like, "Well, Elizabeth, like you are so strong. I can't imagine going through what you went through. I don't know how you survived." And I remember just sitting there and being like, yeah, this was hard. This was terrible. I'm not trying to belittle it, but there's just are no comparisons in life because we're all different. I mean, if the exact same experience happened to someone else, it would still be a different experience because we're
Right.
all different. So you can't compare. We all have our own set of scales. And I use this exact example of, like this was terrible and hard for me, but I can't imagine. I would be absolutely devastated, if my parents went through a divorce, and that is what other people deal with, and that just to me sounds like the worst thing ever because I'd come from such a secure home. I mean, my parents had really laid the foundation to my life. I felt like I could always turn to them. I felt like they would always be a team. They would always be there together. And so then, um 7 years ago, when my dad told me that they were going to get a divorce, I that shook my foundation. It felt like my foundation had cracked because that was just always something that I had taken for granted, and I couldn't imagine them not being together, and I couldn't imagine having to like divide holidays or
Yeah.
birthdays or special events. And then as an adult, I felt like it was. I mean, I haven't experienced divorce through a child's eyes, but and I'm sure there are complexities that I will never understand that children face when their parents divorce. But as an adult going through it, all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, like it almost feels like they want not not that my parents wanted you to take sides, but in some ways
Yeah.
a little bit. And who do you decide to spend Thanksgiving with, and who do you decide to spend Christmas with? And I mean, I'm a mom and I have a family, and I have obligations, and I can't do two Thanksgivings, and I can't put on two different Christmas parties, and it can be really hard because then you're navigating two really new relationships and trying to figure out a way forward, and then trying to explain it to my own children. I mean, they've asked, why aren't they married anymore? And then, not wanting to scare my children into thinking that somehow my husband and I don't love each
Right.
other, or that we're going to break up or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's a lot to handle. I have so
Yeah.
much more compassion for anyone who goes through a divorce or a sad breakup.
Yeah. How much do your children know about what happened to you? And even more than that, how did you find the ability to trust somebody, to get married, to start your own family, to trust that your kids would stay protected? I bet that took a lot of mental stamina to get to that point.
Well, so for a long time, I was nervous. I was
Yeah.
scared to be left alone around men, but I think there were some things that really helped me overcome it. When I was kidnapped by an older man. I was married, forced into it. I mean, it didn't matter how many times I said no or cried. I didn't have a choice there. I had no autonomy over my body or really any power to make any choices while I was kidnapped. And I didn't come home and immediately get married. I didn't come home and immediately jump into relationships. And my parents didn't arrange my marriage. And I wasn't, you know, forced to marry an old man. I think if that were my situation, I think I probably would still be struggling with it. But I was allowed to come home and to some degree almost return to childhood. I mean, I wasn't in the life and death situation that I had been in. I had my parents there to protect me. I was returning to go to high school.
Hmm.
Um, like I was able to um, reunite with friends, make new friends. And so it was a very different situation than what I had just been through. And when I met my husband, I mean, I chose him. Like,
Yeah.
I could say no if I didn't want to go out with him, or I could have said no when he asked me to marry him. And he wasn't 40 years older than me or 30 years older than me. I mean,
Right.
he was my same age, and he just always felt so safe to me. I remember he's from Scotland, and when I flew over to Scotland, I remember being really nervous on the airplane because, geez, Scotland to Utah, that seemed like a really long distance relationship that might just not work out. And I remember getting off the plane and he was waiting for me outside the doors. And I remember he just had his arms open. I remember just walking straight into his arms and just feeling like, even though I was in a foreign country, I felt like I was at home. He was
Wow.
my home. And having kids, I mean, it was scary. I remember when we brought my oldest daughter home from the hospital, I just felt like my heart had moved up into my throat to the point that I felt like I was
Yeah.
scared to breathe and I was scared to leave her alone. I mean, not just because of what someone else could do to her, but I mean, what if she, had what if there were SIDS, or and she just
Hmm.
died, or what if she just stopped breathing, or what if she choked on her blanket, or I don't know. I remember just having
Yeah. The
so
what ifs
many
are
fears.
endless.
And
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I remember feeling like I needed to check on her all the time. I mean, honestly, I don't think I slept for a year. I mean, I know all new parents anyone who has a
Sure.
new baby feels like they don't sleep, and they don't. And I definitely felt like I was maybe going a little bit crazy. And I mean, it's hard. Like, I always want to know where my kids are. I always want to know that they're safe. We've had lots of safety conversations. I mean, typically when they ask to do something, and if I tell them no, I usually turn around and I'm like, "Do you understand why I'm
Yeah.
saying no? It's not because I'm mean. It's not because like I don't want you to have fun or I don't want you to do this, but it is my job to keep you safe, and
Hmm.
it is my job to help get you ready for when you're an adult and when you move out of the house and you try to find your own way in the world." And they don't always appreciate it.
Well, they're
They're
kids.
usually like, "Mom,
Yeah.
it's fine, it's fine, this is fine, you're just I know it's your job just to keep us safe." But I mean, I can't help it.
Do they know what happened to you?
They do, yeah. I mean, not like in extreme
Sure.
details, but they know that I was kidnapped. And actually, my son, not that long ago, he was sitting up at the counter, and he's like, Mom, he's like, if I was you, I would not have been kidnapped. And I was like, oh, really? Like,
Enlighten
why do
me.
you
What do you
think that?
mean?
And he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, he's like, well, if someone tried to if someone tried to kidnap me, I would have just kicked him in the penis. And I was like, you know what, buddy? I hope if anyone ever does try to kidnap you, I hope you do kick him in the penis.
I mean, but that also shows the innocence of kids. I mean, the same exactly what we were talking about with you too. But I mean, it's cute. It's cute, but it really goes to show just kind of what the child's mentality is in that. So I mean, yeah, that would be hard, and I mean, it seems like you're navigating it so well, given what had happened. Something you mentioned about kind of going back to high school, you came back as much as you wanted to probably go back to complete normalcy. I can't imagine everyone treated you the exact same. I mean, you kind of became an unwanted celebrity in terms of being rescued and then trying to go back. And then I can only imagine people are talking to you and thinking if they have, something that's upset them, immediately following that with, oh, but it's nothing like you've gone through, or feeling like they have to couch it with that. Did that bother you? How did you find a way forward? And I know and I assume you probably appreciate when people were able to treat you like the Elizabeth they knew.
Um, yeah, it was an adjustment. I mean, I remember walking down the halls and someone would shout out my name just to see if I'd turn to see if it was really me,
Mm.
which I mean is kind of funny because it's not like my schedule changed. I was in the same
Right.
classes every day.
Yeah.
But whatever. And I think probably a lot of people, a lot of the other students had been warned not to ask me questions. And I think there was probably a lot of people who just didn't know how to interact with me. And so
Yeah.
probably just thought it's better not to. But I will say that, I mean, not that time heals all wounds or time always tells, but in many instances it does. And people that were my genuine friends or wanted to genuinely be friends with me just because they, again, genuinely liked me, I mean, those people were still my friends 6 months later, a year later, 3 years later. Um, and and so that really helped finding those people.
Another thing you had to do after this too was testify in trial. I mean, you're still young and having to go through and verbalize it, but you're also tied to only being able to say certain things on the stand or what the attorneys ask you. And so, did you feel like you were able to actually share in full what had happened to you, or did you feel a bit bound by just the legal system and how you had to be and act and almost portray yourself on the stand in this trial?
I mean, I was 23 when I uh, testified, and I remember, I mean, I had been prepped, I had been interviewed by the FBI and the prosecution extensively before I took the stand. I mean, it was like over a week of just very intensive questioning. And then and then I was on the stand and I was examined, I was cross-examined, and I ended up walking away from that just feeling like, yes, I had talked about what happened, but I hadn't spoken about how it made me feel. I didn't talk about kind of the thought processes that went through my head as these events unfolded, or the emotional journey that it took me on. It just
Yeah.
kind of felt like, I don't know, like a list of facts. And I remember at that moment just feeling like I never wanted this information to be out there to begin with. But now that it is, this is my life. Like, this is a part of my life, like it or not. And my life is more than just bullet points, more than just a list of facts. And if this information is going to be out there, then I want to give it some context. I want it to serve a greater purpose. And that's how I ended up writing my first book. That's how I ended up starting the Elizabeth Smart Foundation. That's how I really ended up diving headfirst into the world of advocacy for other survivors. So I would say it really ended up being quite a pivotal moment in my life, the trial, and not just because it was kind of the ending of a chapter, but because it really kind of set the course for my life since then.
Do you think you actually almost garnered more purpose from the trial than trauma?
Um, sorry, I'm not sure I'm understanding your
Oh, well,
exact
just
question.
I think because when you said okay, you went through the trial, it kind of set up this path for your life. A lot of people, especially young adults and kids, they don't want them to testify or they don't want them to have to relive what they went through because of how traumatic that would be. But because of the age that you were and just kind of going through it that way, and now getting into advocacy, do you feel like it was almost a little bit more cathartic for you at that point versus something really detrimental at that age?
I wouldn't say it was cathartic because it was hard.
Yeah,
It didn't feel like a healing experience being up on the stand. I mean, the sentencing, like, that was a great day,
sure.
knowing that Ryan Mitchell was never going to get out of prison again. I'd say that was good, but listening to so many testimonies, having to give my own testimony, I mean, it was hard. And the defense, like, I remember I was so angry and disgusted with the defense. I remember just sitting there thinking, how can anyone with half a conscience
Yeah.
try to defend these monsters? Like, what is wrong with them? Why would you ever choose to defend child rapists, kidnappers, abusers? Like, what is wrong with you? And then at the end of the trial, I mean, because it was emotional, it was hard. I remember the lead defense attorney coming up to me, and he said, "Elizabeth, I want you to know I did my very best job that I possibly could for his defense. And I want you to know that I did it for you so that this could never be called a mistrial, so that you never have to go through this again." And that did honestly change my perspective. And I ended up walking away with respect for the lead attorney
Wow.
on of the defense team, because I'd never thought of it that way before. He's like, I know he's guilty. I know he did terrible things to you, but I never want you to have to go through this again. And that just really, it ended up meaning a lot to me.
You don't see attorneys do that all the time either. So that's fascinating and just an interesting perspective. I know he is in prison for life, but Wanda Barzee was released from prison several years ago. What was that like for you? And did you feel the way you expected to? Or when that happened, did anything happen or did you feel a certain way that you weren't really anticipating?
I mean, I was really disappointed that she was released because I felt she was just as culpable, just as guilty
Sure.
as Brian Mitchell was. I mean, she sat there. I mean, the first morning when he was like, "Oh, she hasn't started her period yet. Should I still rape her?" And she was like, "Yeah." I mean, he didn't say rape, but
Sure.
she fully supported it. She encouraged it. She watched it happen. She sat there, right next to me while I was being raped, and she never once stepped in to try to protect me or help me. And she just really viewed me as like a possession and someone who she could boss around, someone who she could look down upon. And so to me, it did not feel like justice when she was released. And but then I feel like it also gave me perspective for other survivors, because so many other survivors, they never see a courtroom. Their
Yeah.
perpetrators are never behind bars. So even though I was so unhappy that she was released, I also knew that she has a file that follows her wherever she goes. She will always be a sex offender. She will always have to follow the rules of the sex offender registry. I remember the governor coming out and saying that they were going to watch her very closely, and if she was going to be on a tight leash if she set a foot out of line, like they were going to take her back to prison. But that, justice had run its course and that she was now being released. And I guess what I've just learned through my experiences through what we call the justice system is that actually we don't have a justice system. We have a legal system, but we don't have a justice system, because no matter how much time my captors spend in jail, that will never return to me what was taken from me. I will never get those 9 months of my life back. I will never um, have the abuse and the rapes taken out of my life. Nothing can make up for that. And so yeah, I it's given me a lot of compassion and empathy and insight to many other survivors.
Yeah. And I know you've spoken with other survivors many times as you've participated in all the advocacy since. Um, you have done so much, the Elizabeth Smart Foundation, Smart Defense. Talk to me about how you started those two things, and where you really wanted to go with both of them now in this day and age.
So I started the Elizabeth Smart Foundation after the trial, because I wanted to do something. I wanted to make a difference. If my life was going to be out there, then it needed all of this misery that I'd experienced. It needed to have a purpose, needed to be for a reason. And I just remember feeling like I had been so embarrassed and felt so much shame around what I had experienced. And I'd listened to so many other survivors say the exact same thing. I knew that wasn't right, and I wanted to change really the world on how we view survivors, on how we view sexual violence and just abuse in general. And so we started the Elizabeth Smart Foundation with that really at the forefront of our focus. And then a few years ago, or a little bit longer than a few years ago, I was on a plane and I ended up being groped on a plane. And I was so shocked. In that moment, I froze. And when I got off the plane, I mean, I called my husband, I called my dad, and I was just like,
Yeah.
again, I must be one of the most well known victims in America. Not necessarily that this man on the plane next to me knew who I was, but how is this happening to me again? Like, do I just have a big billboard on my forehead that says easy target? I mean, I'd fallen asleep and that's when it had happened, and I woke up to it happening. Um, but I was just like, this is not okay. And if this is happening to me up in first class where I'd been upgraded to, like, who else is it happening to? And why are we not doing more than this? I mean, in school, you're taught so much safety. Everybody
Yeah.
knows what to do if you catch on fire, stop, drop, and roll. But how many people actually have to use stop, drop, and
I
roll?
never
No,
have. I mean,
it's maybe one out of hundreds.
sure.
Like now when I go out and I speak, I typically ask that question because I'm curious and I haven't found an exact statistic yet.
No.
Everyone is taught stop, drop, and roll. But when I go out and speak and I ask, a room of, two or 300 people, has anyone ever used it? I get one, maybe two hands raised. But I also know that the statistics here in Utah, it's about 1 in 3 women who are sexually abused. And those are just counting the cases that are reported. It wouldn't surprise me if it was 1 out of 2 women
Way higher.
get
Yeah.
sexually abused in their life. And why are we not talking about that in school? Why aren't we teaching, what you should do if someone is trying to abuse you or has abused you or raped you? Like why are we not talking about this safety information that would be so much more applicable than stop, drop, and roll. Not that I'm against that. I think all safety education is good, but
Yeah.
this is the much, much bigger problem than potentially catching on fire. That's how smart defense was born. I wanted women and girls in particular to be empowered. I wanted them to not be afraid to use their voices. I wanted them to realize that they're so much stronger than they think they are, than all of us think we are. And if anyone was raised like me, you know, you're raised to be polite, you're raised to be respectful, you're raised to be courteous. And I've heard the example used that, you know, a gazelle wouldn't get into an elevator with a lion. And, you know, that you'd never find that situation out in the wild. And yet we see that all the time in society. I mean, you know, women will get into elevators with men who their gut is telling them, no, don't do it, but you still get in because you don't want to appear rude, or you don't want to appear like you don't want to offend someone. But now I'm just to the point where your safety takes precedence over someone else's feelings.
Oh,
Like,
I like
you
that
should
quote.
not worry about offending someone when it comes to your personal safety. I think it's great to be polite. I think it's great to be courteous, respectful, all of those kinds of things. But if your gut is telling you, don't get in that car, don't get in that elevator, prioritize your safety.
Yeah. And trust yourself. Your book, Detours, is coming out. This is a big deal. A lot of people want to read this. You also have a Netflix documentary coming out. Let's start with the book. I want to know, why did you want to write this now, and what do you hope people most get from reading it from front to back?
So I really just wanted it to be like a friend.
Yeah.
Um, like I wanted it just to help people kind of navigate their healing, because I've actually never met anyone who doesn't have a story. They're all different, but everyone has a story. I mean, loss of a loved one, loss of a friend, loss of a job, kidnapping, abuse, everyone, illness, everyone has a story. And it can be so easy kind of to fall into these ruts of life and just feel like this is too hard. Like, I can't handle this. I mean, I've been there. I've felt that way. Like, this is too much for me. And so in this book, I tried to find the points in my life that were turning points in my story, because you know, I think we all have these visions for how our lives are going to go. And I mean, there's so many analogies, you know, life is a highway, life is a
Sure.
journey,
Yeah.
life is a road, winding path in the woods, whatever. And so I kind of just took that analogy and ran with it. And when we have these roads laid out before us, you're like, oh, it's gonna, you know, we don't plan for the potholes or the landslides. We don't plan for the tragedies to happen. We just plan for like everything to go according to that plan. And then when something comes crashing through your life, it can be really hard to find your way forward. And so I kind of talk about these rest stops in my book. I mean, the first one being, it's okay to grieve the life that you lost, like the plans you had for your future. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. Like, there's no shame in that. And then kind of this next rest stop, like, give yourself some grace. Do not compare yourself to anyone else.
Yeah.
You know, take the time that you need. There is no deadline for healing. I feel like that's such a huge tragedy when people are like, oh, well, you know, this happened to my friend or my daughter or me, and I just don't understand why I'm not better. Like, why is this still so hard for me? And like, I want to hug them and I want to tell them it's okay. And, you know, healing is not just a straight line. I mean, it's not just like better and better and better and better and better. I mean, it's kind of like a messy roller coaster. Like,
Totally.
you can think you're doing really great, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're right back where you started. And then, you know, you feel like things like start smoothing out again, and then you end up doing like, feel like you're, you know, set back, or like you've been doing so well for so long, you think it's behind you, and all of a sudden it pops up again. That is totally normal. And I want people to know that there's no expiration date on healing, there's no deadline for healing. We're all different. You just need to figure out what works for you. Kind of the next rest stop that I explore is, you know, pursue connection fearlessly. Like, humans are social beings. We need people in our lives. We need meaningful relationships in our life. I don't know how anyone can heal without having a support system around them. And that was so key in my healing. I've heard way too many stories of survivors saying things like, I was too scared to share my story. I didn't think I'd be believed. Or I tried to share my story and I wasn't believed. I mean, when someone shares with you the worst moments of their life, number one, that took an extraordinary amount of courage,
Yeah.
and they obviously felt like you were someone that they could trust, and you should really be taking that trust with reverence, not just, oh, whatever, another day, big piece of gossip, whatever. And then I think we need to be very cautious in how we respond when someone discloses trauma to us, because that really can make such an impact on whether they go on to seek maybe professional help,
Yeah.
report it to the police, find healthy ways to work through it, or whether they just bottle it up inside them and have it eat them from the inside out. So finding those healthy connections in life are so important. And then kind of like this last stop, rest stop. I mean, look at how far you've come. I mean, take time to celebrate yourself and find your look at your victories along the way. I mean, life should be beautiful. So don't give up on yourself. I mean, believe in yourself. Learn how to speak kind words to yourself. Change that inner voice in your head that's so easy to be critical of ourselves, to being like, you are strong. You've survived every day of your life so far, and you're going to keep going. You can survive this too.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think people can focus sometimes on the negative. This bad thing happened, and it's hard to focus on the positives. And then you that describe that nonlinear healing journey that you kind of up, down, up, down. But this is so applicable to anything anybody's going through, any sort of grief, any sort of loss or hardship. I mean, this is really a book for everybody.
I mean, I hope so.
Yeah. And then there's the Netflix documentary coming out. Obviously, we know how popular the true crime genre is, documentaries, docuseries. Why now? And what was it about this specific documentary that you wanted to be involved with, and the storytelling of it? What can people expect?
I just feel like, I mean, and I guess I feel like I've learned firsthand that the best way that people learn is through stories. I mean, if anyone's like me, I can be told statistics all day, and sure, one or two of them might stick in my head, but the rest of them just
Same. Yeah.
unfortunately, like it might impact me for a second, but then I forget the next day. Like I am not great with numbers, but stories, I never forget how they make me feel, and I feel like they help people understand so many different elements and aspects of what happens in these extreme cases. So like for instance, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Tanya Cash story, where
No.
she was kidnapped by the school janitor and she was held captive up in his bedroom for 10 years with his parents living below. um, and she has an extraordinary story. And her story, she really goes into grooming. And I think a lot of people can be like, oh, grooming, like, okay, like, yes, but no. Like, really? She couldn't just scream out? Like, really? And when she shared her story with me, she really, like, talked about, no, you don't understand. Like, I came from a, um, troubled home. I was looking for love. I was looking for acceptance. I was looking for stability. This janitor befriended me. He bought me gifts. He went out of his way to take care of me. I felt like I had a friend. I felt like I had a confidant. And like she really talked about each step that this man took to gain control and power over her. And then she talked about when it turned violent and how that fear and just the fear of not being accepted, the fear of being blamed for not doing more took over her life. And I just felt and I like there's so many other examples I could give of stories that have so many lessons to teach, and the amount of other people who I've heard say things like, because I knew your story I felt like I could share mine, or
Yeah.
because I heard your story I felt like I didn't have to be ashamed of what I went through because I went through something similar. I mean, I feel like stories and storytelling is so powerful, and what I really appreciated about this documentary is that the production company didn't just, I guess, steal my story and run away with
Sure.
it. I mean, they were so um, conscientious in their production, and they wanted me to be very heavily involved. And they wanted, I mean, for instance, when I saw the first cut of it, I love that they tried to be so thoughtful and mindful of me that at the end of it, I remember giving them some feedback, and I was like, I love how sensitive you are towards me in this, but it's okay to talk about what I went through, because if you didn't know that, you as a production company were being sensitive to me, it could kind of look like I just went on vacation for 9 months, and I
Wow.
didn't.
Yeah.
And so like I really just appreciate how much consideration they gave to me and my feedback and involvement. And I love and I appreciate when I see the victims, these survivors, being able to be the ones kind of leading their stories and saying this is how it really was, and being included, because I feel like that's what's most impactful.
Oh, absolutely. In listening to you talk, it just seems that for a time in your life where, I mean, the control you had over anything was completely stripped, it feels you've done a 180 and have now taken complete control back of your life and now have this power to share this with other people. And that's pretty amazing given everything that you've been through. Where can people find your book if they want to download or purchase it? And then when does the documentary come out for people who want to click that notification to be notified when they can watch it?
Yes, so my book's available at elizabethsmart.com, or you can find it on Amazon. What can't you find on Amazon?
Truly.
And then the documentary comes out January 21st.
Awesome. I so appreciate you sharing this. I know you share your story in so many different ways, but to be able to just sit and have a conversation about it all and from then and now and you becoming a parent and all of that, I just think it's so important what you have to say. And in a way, it's relatable with how many people can learn about your healing journey and how they could apply what you were able to do to maybe their own. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm so happy we got to meet. And I'm a big supporter of everything that you do.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for being such a insightful host and asking such great questions.
Oh, thank you. I'll take that. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.